Hey everyone,
Hi.
welcome to Happiness Hunch. We are Mike and Lynn. And today we're going to talk about a hunch that we have had around referred pain. Now, if you've heard our video from a few weeks back, you will recall that I have hurt my back really bad. And so these last few weeks of videos, I've been really faking it really well because I've been putting a smile on my face, but actually been in excruciating pain. I'm actually doing okay today. But I have been thinking about this idea of referred pain. So let me just kind of tell this story and maybe you'll laugh at it. But so in the early stages of my back problem, I was told by several doctors that I had a herniated disc. And I was in denial about my herniated disc. And that's because I didn't feel any pain in my lower back. I kept feeling pain in my hip and in my rear end and all the way down my leg. And they kept saying, well, that's because you have a herniated disc. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's a herniated disc. So anyway, I had all these other theories about what it might have been. And so finally, about 2 weeks ago, I went in for an MRI. And, wow, wouldn't you guess, I have a herniated disc in my very lower part of my back.
And so all that pain.
Yeah, all that pain. Well, so I learned something about referred pain. So what I learned was that oftentimes with back injuries, the pain is not where the back injury is. It gets referred to another part of your body. That's why they call it referred pain. But as I've been thinking about this, and this actually is a concept that I've thought about before my back injury, but it kind of brought it back to the forefront of my mind. And that is that oftentimes in life, this concept of referred pain shows up in other ways. It shows up in our psychological life, in our moral life, in our spiritual life. It shows up in parenting. Okay, so I'll give you an example from parenting. For many years, when I was parenting my children, they would misbehave and act in a certain way. Did you ever notice that? Did you ever notice that our kids would misbehave?
Every once in a blue moon.
So I would always deal with the issue of their behavior.
Me too. I'm more guilty than he was.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And but then we would just see repeated patterns of this behavior. And
very frustrating.
When one of my children got into senior year in high school, I realized something. And what I realized was that every time he started really acting out and sort of picking on his siblings, he always had a test in school the next day. And so this was his way of dealing with stress, which was just kind of acting out and being a very disruptive member of the household.
And taking the stress out on others.
Yeah. That never happens in our family, though.
I never do that.
Yeah, it's just our one child at one time. But what was interesting is that going forward, as I started dealing with him as the year went on, I started focusing on trying to figure out what was really bothering him and getting to the root of whatever it was that was upsetting him and dealing with that issue. And what I found as time went on is that his behavioral problems went away. So the behavior was really symptomatic of a deeper problem, which Lynn and I were not really dealing with. We were dealing with the outward manifestation of the behavior. So kind of like in parallel fashion with my back. So all the weeks, for the first probably 4 to 6 weeks of my back issue, I was like massaging my hip and my leg. I was using this tennis ball. I was doing all this work on where I was feeling the pain and realizing finally that wasn't really where the root of the problem was. So, well, now I'm doing traction, and I'm going to have this epidural injection to try to, really cut the pain, and try to get back on my feet. But it's been a really big learning curve.
And that epidural is going right into where the problem area really is.
Yeah, they're shooting something right into the root of the nerve that's being pinched by the herniation and hoping to shrink that problem. But I think just, the hunch in all of this is the recognition that so often when we have a disorder of some kind, or we have pain, or we have like a behavior that's dysfunctional, so often it's actually referred into that from another place. Could be another place in our heart, another place in our mind, another place in our body. And so...
And it's very easy to get fixated on the thing that's frustrating you when actually the problem can be elsewhere. It can be precipitated by something else. And you're not even looking in that direction, and it kind of is very confusing at times.
So, I mean, there's been a lot of lessons in this. One is just humility, because...
He told the doctor what it was, and then...
Well, what I thought it was. I wasn't that strong about it, but he kept saying, no, it's a herniated disc. I'm like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a herniated disc. Got all my reasons, but, lo and behold, I looked at the MRI. I was like, oh, look, that's a herniated disc. So, I think the lesson is that oftentimes when things go awry or they're, in our lives, or, it could be an addiction. It could be a bad pattern of behavior. It could be headaches. It could be whatever. Oftentimes, the root of the problem is something that's undetected, and so we have to dig deeper. We have to look more carefully and look more closely. We have to listen to lots of different. We have to pay attention, listen to the different signals and the different signs that we're getting, talking to people, getting other people's points of view to really get to the bottom of it. And this is why things like, spiritual direction is a great idea, or even seeing a counselor or a good friend or getting mentored or, because so often we're not good at diagnosing ourselves.
Especially ourselves.
Yeah, especially ourselves. And then oftentimes we assume that the symptom is the cause. And I think when it comes to healing or whatever, we need to get to the cause of the problem and not just deal with the symptoms.
Right. So. I have another example of that. So right when way back, I mentioned it in another video, that I started working on my health in my 20s, late 20s. And I was noticing that I had thyroid symptoms and that my thyroid wasn't functioning very well. And one of the key, if you look up a list of symptoms, one of the key things you'll see is that part of your eyebrows disappear and you don't have as much hair on your legs, and there's this whole hair thing. And anyway, so I would use eyebrow pencil, and cover it in, and thinking, what's wrong with my eyebrows? What's wrong with my eyebrows? But when you look at the list of symptoms, an eyebrow issue is very much related to thyroid. And it's been interesting because with the first phase of our dietary changes, doing Weston A. Price stuff and really eating real food, a lot of my symptoms went away, like cold extremities. That's definitely another symptom of thyroid issues. And that went away, but the eyebrow thing never did. So we've had another phase of learning something very new in our health that's really improved things. And now suddenly, at age 52, I have full eyebrows that I did not have in my 20s. So.
I have to trim them every day.
Well, now I still have light hair, and I do still have to use a pencil, but I have the shape because it's already there.
Yeah. In fact, you were just you just got your hair cut the other day, and the hair person said, "You have all this new growth coming in."
I know, and
I'm
I have all this new hair coming in.
I better find out what you're doing. Yeah. I'm getting a little thin up here.
So, so there you go. People can really focus. I mean, they're even tattooing eyebrows. I mean, this century, makeup-wise, is the century of eyebrows. They were huge. I'm glad they've tamed them down because I didn't like all the extravagant, you can't even see anything else on your face eyebrows. But it's a big, this is a big thing right now. So it's kind of nice that it's been rectified for me. And then even though I have these really light eyebrow hairs, I have no trouble with the pencil. I'm not guessing anymore. They're there, And so it's just amazing how the diet, focusing in on the diet, fixed this. You can't just look at a symptom like headaches or skin eruptions and think, just attack the skin, put on a lotion. There's something underneath there that you want to get to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think by way of closing, just in philosophy, there's a concept called analogy, which I've learned and I've always liked a lot, and that is that there's analogies in reality, and so oftentimes what happens in the physical order of things is like an analogy of what is happening in your spiritual life or in your moral life or in your psychological life. So, the fact that there's this thing in our bodies called referred pain or referred conditions, where there's an underlying cause which is actually manifesting itself in a different way, applies equally. It's a very obvious and explicit way of understanding how that shows up in other parts of our life. So if we have a dysfunctional behavior in our life, maybe there's some kind of addiction we have or whatever, the addiction is a symptom of a deeper problem, and it's going and finding out where that problem is, and that's where the healing needs to take place. Or it could be something, it could be something spiritual, and so maybe in your prayer life you feel like you're experiencing a lot of frustration in your prayer life. Maybe your prayer life is dry, but there's actually something else going on there, and we need to pay attention to those things and try to understand those things, because oftentimes the underlying causes of what ails us are hidden, and we have to uncover them, and that requires patience. It requires humility. I didn't have the humility in the beginning to really pay attention, and I don't like to think of how much time I wasted, maybe 3 or 4 weeks laying on my back because I didn't respond quickly enough to go get the MRI and actually look and see what was going on. There were some reasons for that, but that we waited. But at any rate, it's still it's been a really painful but humbling lesson to learn, and I think it can apply. And again, I'd refer back to the parenting issue. So often parenting children, we see behaviors, and as parents we want to go right after the behavior and not take enough time to try to understand where is that coming from, like what's going on inside of the child that makes them act out in this way. And there's usually some kind of pain point. There's a stress, there's an anxiety, there's something going on that if you address that issue, then suddenly the behavioral problems correct themselves. And we've seen this over and over and over
and
again.
even in ourselves, I tend to get stressed out pretty easily. So when I start getting stressed out, I try to stop myself and say, okay, what's going on? And get to the deeper thing instead of acting out and saying things I don't want to say, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. All right, so that's our happiness hunch for today. Referred pain. So thanks for joining us. If you have your own experiences of referred pain that you want to share with us, please put your comments below, like this video, and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time. Follow your hunches.
Yeah, follow those hunches. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.